I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
Ich bin ein Realist.
If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women.
The people, I would say, there is no patent. Would you patent the sun?
I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace.
Welcome to the Biographers.
I did want to tell you something that I thought was really cool, actually. And this maybe will give you an extra level of like, no shit. So, a buddy of mine that I work with, he's a really, really good dude. T-Mac, I call him. Shout out T-Mac if you can hear me, buddy. His name's Tom. And he is also a history nerd. Loves history in general, right? Mm-hmm. And I was on a call with him earlier today. And every time that he and I get onto a call together before the call for 5 minutes, he's like, oh, history this and history that. So obviously, there's a point where I am talking to him about the podcast, right? And he's actually listened to a good bit of it. Mm-hmm. But when we were talking today, he was like, dude, I've been meaning to tell you this. And it took me a minute to realize it for some reason. He was like, but I knew about your podcast before you told me.
Really?
And I was like, wait, like
I shouldn't sound so surprised, but that's actually kind of surprising.
No, I mean, as of now, we're relatively niche. So like
yeah.
To hear somebody just in the wild being like, no, I actually listened to your show before I even knew it was your show is pretty weird, you know?
That's cool.
So obviously I was like, well, how did you learn about it? And he was like, well, I got some friends, all my buddies, we're much more into history and stuff than we are into pop culture. So we'll sit around and we talk about history. And he was like, actually a friend of mine that suggested your show to me. And then I listened to it and was like, this is really good. And then for whatever reason, when you first brought it up to me, I just didn't put two and two together. And now it's crazy talking to you and going, oh my gosh, like I actually knew about your show. And then you told me this was your show. That's crazy.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that made me really happy.
That's so cool.
Isn't that neat?
That's so cool. And yeah, for like all the listeners out there, we've just finally got sort of the results of our collaboration with Max Miller. So before we were on air, we were just talking about the new influx. And we've already said hello to everybody, but hello to everybody actually, now that we know how many of y'all have hopped over here. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. We've already gotten some comments. I think we had a comment on the Nikola Tesla episode. I also wanted to give a huge thanks to, is it Pam for joining our Patreon. It's been amazing. So it's cool to see that we're out and moving in the world, dude.
Totally. And again, big thanks to Max Miller, who just very generously was like, yeah, guys, let's work together on something. So for everybody, I think we introduced it on the last episode, but once again, for all of our newer listeners here, hello and welcome to the Biographers. I'm Daniel Newman, hanging out with Akiva Miola.
What's up, y'all?
And we're about to get going into Frida Kahlo, numero dos. And I feel like I have to say it in my white boy Spanish.
Numero dos. Yes.
Numero dos.
Very California.
I'm trying. Man, anytime that I'm around any of my friends that can speak Spanish and they speak Spanish to somebody who speaks Spanish in front of me, I always go, damn it, I need to learn how to speak Spanish. And I want to, you know?
I feel that as a quarter-lingual person. Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't know, I was in California for my 9-to-5 job last week, and we got a friend of mine and I got into an Uber going to dinner, and the Uber driver pretty much exclusively spoke Spanish. And normally when that happens, I, not speaking Spanish, I just kind of pipe down because like I can't say a whole lot to this individual, and they can't say a lot to me, so I don't want to embarrass myself. But my friend who I was with just busts out into full complicated Spanish sentences. And I was like, damn it, you know Spanish too? I was like, I need to learn how to speak Spanish, man.
Yeah, man. That's like me with my sister. I remember, both of my parents are Spanish teachers, and I don't speak a whole lot of Spanish. And I remember my mom used to tell me that my pronunciation was like the best in the family, but Gavi can speak fluent Spanish. And it makes me so mad because I'm like, but I sound better in Spanish than you. And she's like, it doesn't matter. I can talk to people.
I thought you said your dad was a music teacher. Or is he both?
Now he's a Spanish teacher. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He taught music for like 30 years, and now he's teaching Spanish.
Because I remember you said when the Franz Liszt series came out, he was like, "Oh, I know all that I need to know about Franz Liszt," and then like couldn't stop listening to the series.
Yes. Yeah. Dad has just been teaching music for so long that I think he's sick of it. I remember when we were in high school, we would just drive with no radio on to and from school, and I'm like, "Why don't you turn it on?" He's like, "Because I'm going to be listening to music for 8 hours, dude." And I was like, fair point.
Oh, I feel that. That's kind of how I've gotten. I promise we'll get going into our actual show in just a second here, but that's kind of where I've gotten to with regular music in general, where like I feel like I've heard every pop song I can hear, even if it's a new pop song. I'm like, I know this song. Somebody else wrote it already. It's the same song. So I've been attracted to bands like Krongbin and La Lome, as you know, who are, to my ears, very new musicians because they're playing all this world-influenced stuff, and it's groovy. Anyhow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll get going here. I don't want to dilly-dally too much because we've had people get angry at us in the past.
We're schmoozy.
But just before we get going here, a couple of housekeeping items first and foremost. For anybody that is enjoying the show, even if you're one of our new listeners and you're just feeling ultra generous, you want to be cool, you want to support us, you can do so by going to our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebiographers. As of now, we just have 2 tiers, $5 and $10, and there's no incentive. I'll be dead honest with you.
Besides being a nice person and realizing how much writing we do.
Quite honestly, these are basically, it's not quite full-time, but extra borderline full-time jobs for us to do these podcasts for you. So if you feel like saying thank you, we would very much appreciate it. And then likewise, we've also actually seen, I didn't tell you this earlier before we hit record, we've gotten a pretty nice little boost in people leaving us nice reviews in different places. So on places like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we've seen a handful of nice little 5 stars jump our way. So if anybody else is feeling like you want to jump on that nice train as well, obviously, if you think this show sucks and you want to give us a 1 star, don't leave that review. We don't need that.
We don't need that. Leave a review on somewhere else. Joe Rogan. You take your hatred out on another podcast.
Oh, that's a good one. Anyhow, no, I'm kidding with you. If you really do hate our show, I would actually just prefer you gave us feedback, and you can do that by sending us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com.
That way we can fight you privately.
Or just say, hey, thank you. We'll take that concern to heart. I still haven't gotten over it. It was like 2 years ago. Somebody called us woke because we were talking about slavery. And I'm like, what? Like, whatever. I'm not upset about it. So,
of course not.
All right, I'm going to stop talking. Akiva, let's get into Frida Kahlo Part 2.
All right. So in our very first episode on Frida Kahlo, we covered the first 18 years of her life and how it set the precedent for her future. Born to German and maybe Jewish and Mexican parents, Frida would spend her early years listening to the rifle shots of the Mexican Revolution, only to contract polio after the fighting stopped. She'd become a tomboy and an introvert, often fleeing into her own imagination when she failed to make friends. And seeing a bit of himself in his daughter, Guillermo Kahlo would bring Frida into his isolated life, having her work in his photography studio as the two connected. And she would take a really strong interest in academia as a result, thanks to her father's book collection. As a result, when she became a teenager, she was enrolled as one of the first women to attend La Preparatoria, a prestigious school in the heart of Mexico City. Born from the new ideals of Mexicanidad, which we talked about a little bit, our scholars wanted to showcase their country's intrinsic cultural value. La Preparatoria would become the training ground for Mexico's new wave of thinkers. At the school, Frida would fall in love with a tribe of her own, the Cachuchas, a free-spirited, if you can call them that, group of progressives and pranksters known for causing utter chaos in class.
I call them tiny terrorists.
Literally. It was during this time with the Cachuchas, that she first met her love, Alejandro Arias Gomez. While the two were still together, things got a bit rocky when Alejandro discovered Frida had an affair with a woman from her job at the library. But nonetheless, the two would stay with one another for now. What ended our episode, however, was of a far more tragic nature. Alejandro and Frida would both hop on a wooden cab bus headed back to Coyoacán, but to their horror, the bus would find itself being slowly crushed into a trolley car, leaving Frida damaged for life. And I'm just going to say, trigger warning, the next part of today's episode will cover the gory details of Frida's accident and the aftermath of her time in the hospital. It would be easy to brush through this time with a tame description of what happened to her, but I feel like it'd go against the wishes of a woman who so blatantly put her pain on display through her art. So, once again, fair warning, right? She wasn't coy about this type of stuff. The best account of the crash itself, I think, comes from her lover Alejandro, who was sitting just across from Frida. Left with little more than scrapes and bruises, Arias gave Hayden Herrera, my primary source, a crystal clear description. Herrera mentions that as Alejandro Arias recalls the moment, it's decades later at this point, his voice falls to a whisper, as if he didn't want to reawaken the memory again. Right? So she's talking to this old man about this, and he's just like very quietly sort of recounting the memory.
I can only imagine. I mean, it's
yeah.
a horrific memory. I feel like anybody who's talking about horrific memories, it's like, you know, you're a little bit younger than me, but it's like, I generally am not going to tell people the story of where I was on 9/11 being like, bro, let me set you the scene, right? So I wake up in the morning, right? I go down to watch the news.
You think it's going to be a regular day, and man, the tower got hit. Like, no, you don't.
It's a
you don't
somber
say that.
tale. It's like, regardless of how old you are, man.
But yeah, Alejandro says, quote, "The electric train with the two cars approached the bus slowly and hit the bus in the middle. Slowly, the train pushed the bus, and it had a strange elasticity. It bent more and more, but for a time, it didn't break. It had long benches on either side. I remember that at one moment, my knees touched the knees of the person sitting opposite me, and I was sitting next to Frida. When it reached its maximum flexibility, it burst into 1,000 pieces, and the train kept moving. It ran over many people. Among the iron rods of the train, the handrail broke and went through Frida from one side to the other at the level of her pelvis. When I was able to stand up, I got out from under the train. I had no lesions, only contusions. Naturally, the first thing I did was to look for Frida. Something strange had happened. Frida was totally nude. The collision had unfastened her clothes, and someone in the bus, probably a house painter, had been carrying a packet of powdered gold. This package had broken, and the gold fell all over the bleeding body of Frida. When the people saw her, they cried, "La bailarina," the dancer. With the gold on her red, bloody body, they thought she was a dancer. I picked her up. In those days, I was a strong one. And then I noticed with horror that Frida had a piece of iron in her body. A man said, "We have to take it out." He put a knee on Frida's body and said, "Let's take it out." When he pulled it out, she screamed so loud that when the ambulance came from the Red Cross, her screaming was louder than the siren. Before the ambulance came, I picked up Frida and put her in the empty display window of a billiard room. I took off my coat and put it over her. I thought she was going to die. 2 or 3 people did die at that scene of the accident, and others died later. The scene following the crash was utter chaos. Buses were a new mode of transport at the time, and regulations hadn't been put into place to keep people safe from this type of accident. In fact, the body of the bus itself was made out of wood, so when the crash took place, splinters would lodge themselves into the passengers. One woman would find herself running from the accident with her intestines in her arms.
Oh. Damn.
As for Frida, she might have been the most injured person that would go on to keep living.
That's brutal.
It's a horror film, right? You're imagining these kids are rascals, they're running around the dusty streets of Mexico, and then all of a sudden, like a Guillermo del Toro movie, just like complete chaos. You know, we were talking about this like a telenovela in the first episode. It really like a moment like this. Doesn't that sound like the ending of a season there, right? She's covered. It almost seems like one of her own paintings, right? Because Frida's paintings were so grotesque and also beautiful at the same time. The idea of some person being impaled and covered in gold dust, totally nude at the scene of an accident, that sounds like something that she would paint from one of her own dreams. But interestingly enough, it was like so traumatic, she's never painted it.
Really?
Yeah.
Which is almost a shame because, and you actually said the key person there, which is, in my mind, Guillermo del Toro. Mm-hmm. That image of this wounded person with blood covered in gold, there's something very cinematic, right? About even in my head, the image of that is there's sort of like I can see that in a Guillermo del Toro movie, in something like Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's
right?
like it's like when you see like a beautiful bird that's just like fallen from a tree and died. It's one of those moments where you're just like so, I don't know, taken aback, and you see like I don't know how to describe it, but just the image of that scenario is so jarring.
Or even something, and this is not quite the same comparison because I'm trying to think of movies that I would compare this to, right? But it's sort of like when you back up holistically from the scene in Saving Private Ryan where they're storming the beaches of Normandy. It's like there's something sort of epic and amazing about how this looks. And then you zoom in and you're like, the horror sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And again, I think more than anything else, it really does remind me of something like Guillermo del Toro, or especially just foreign directors, where they have that ability to look at something that's uncomfortable and make it seem very beautiful at the same time, sort of disgusting and beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And I have that image in my head. And very specifically, I don't know if anybody else got this image, I think of the James Bond movie Goldfinger, where at the very beginning of the movie, James Bond's love interest, he leaves the room and comes back and she's dead and she's covered head to toe in like gold makeup.
Yes.
Like glittering gold makeup. That's the image that I have of Frida, except with wounds. I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but that was immediately what my brain went to.
I get it. If you see any of her older or later work, like a few small nips or something like that, a lot of her paintings are this sort of, they almost give you the sensation that you feel bad that you like it, that you feel bad that you find it beautiful because it's depicting something so incredibly tragic. And of course, this isn't art, this is real life and real people, died in this scenario. But it is unusual, right, for Alejandro to not have basically any major injuries, at least none that he wrote about, and then to find his little novia, his little girlfriend, just sitting there covered in blood. Her clothes are off, almost like a Renaissance painting, and there's gold dust covering her body to the point where all of the other bystanders think that she's a dancer or something. Right? It's so unusual.
Well, it's funny that you make that comparison. And full disclosure, I did have to look it up because I couldn't remember who the painter was, but it reminds me very specifically of the very famous painting Saturn Devouring His Son by Francisco Goya.
Yeah.
It's the same thing where it's macabre and sort of disturbing, but it's also amazing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I would almost liken that to, as you kind of said later on, as Frida goes on, her paintings.
Yeah.
But anyhow.
And I mean, we're very privileged to be able to imagine this as a concept, but I'm sure Frida... Well, I don't know. Maybe Frida did see some beauty in it. I don't know. I'd be curious to see what her thoughts are on that. She didn't talk about it very much. It influenced every single moment of her life, but the moment itself was not one that she liked to discuss. And if she did, it was more like she gave a synopsis of what happened. But like, there's like one incident where she kind of tried to pencil sketch out what happened that Herrera has in her book, but nothing ever comes to fruition as far as a painting. I think she just uses it as inspiration for all of her other works, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes a thing is so painful that you can kind of poke around it, but not poke at the center. As for Frida, she might have been the most injured person that would go on to keep living. Arias would follow her to the hospital. At the hospital, doctors would take care of a girl now in pieces. Her spinal column was broken in 3 places around her lumbar, her collarbone was shattered, and 2 of her ribs had snapped in the accident. Her right leg had 11 fractures, her right foot had been dislocated before being crushed under the immense weight. Her left shoulder was out of place, but perhaps the most gruesome of her injuries was from the steel rod itself, which had entered through her stomach, shattered her pelvis in 3 places, and pierced its way out of her vagina.
Oh, bro. Oh.
I'll just let that one sit there for a second.
I have no jokes.
Did you
for
hear
that.
an absolute laundry list, right? The next thing I wrote was the doctors had no idea how this person, now rendered a mass of flesh and broken bone, was even still alive. One of her friends would recall the moment, saying, quote, they had to put her back together in sections as if they were making a photo montage. I mean, imagine seeing that as a doctor sitting in, your operating table. Like, where do we start? 11 fractures in the leg, a crushed, 11 fractures in one leg, a crushed foot, a piercing going through the stomach and out of someone's vagina. That's absolutely insane, right?
And not only, I mean, we say that of like, where would you even start? In 2026, this was, 1924, I think you said last time? 24, 25? At this point, they had barely figured out childbirth. You know what I mean? Like, I can only imagine that a surgeon of that day would
1925, yeah.
25, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's another story. I mean, things weren't even sanitary.
Yeah.
Jeez, man.
And we will start to see, as Frida gets older, the aftermath of the limitations of medical procedures at the time. But even as a doctor right now, if that came to my operating table, what would you do, right? And the fact that at the scene, the first thought between Alejandro and this bystander was to pull the iron rod out, which is like the last thing you're supposed to do in a scenario like that. You've now pulled the pin out of the water balloon, right?
They didn't know.
Yeah, they didn't know. You're just like, we have to fix this, right? Because there's bodies everywhere and carnage in all sorts of different directions, right? It's also just so sickening because the way he talks about the crash is that it was slow, right? The trolley was moving at 20 miles an hour, but it just had, I think because it was on rails, it just had endless amounts of torque. So it just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until eventually they all got crushed. It's absolutely sickening, right?
I do wonder, though, because I know that obviously this has not happened to me, but I wonder if it was one of those situations where people say when a traumatic event happens like that, your adrenaline hits in so fast, things feel like they're going in slow motion. I do wonder if there was an element to that as well, where as it was happening, it all felt like it was happening really slowly.
Oh, probably, yeah.
But in actuality, it was like 10 seconds and it was done, Well,
the thing is, when the crash first hits, and they actually show this in the Salma Hayek movie, when the crash first hits, everybody's like, man, now the bus is messed up. We're going to have to get out.
Jeez.
Okay, stop the trolley. Stop the trolley. Oh, my God, stop the trolley. And then the crash happens. They basically, I think, get crushed up beside a wall, right? Man. We're like, they think that something, they're like, dang it, now I'm going to be late to work. And then they can't get out and like sardines, it's, oof.
Yeah,
but yeah.
That's nauseating.
Yeah. In just a few weeks, Frida would find herself suspended in the air in order to straighten her spine as the doctors wrapped her torso in a plaster corset. She would be left in the hospital for 3 months with the promise of dozens of visits in the future to adjust one thing or another. It's no surprise that It's no surprise that her time there was excruciating, with some days going by in a screaming blur while others were sedated by morphine and cocaine. After the plaster body cast had set, however, she was put on bed rest. Unable to sit up, she begged the friends that visited her to read her books or give her newspapers to keep her mind occupied. One of the books, by the way, being The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas.
Hey!
But she would soon receive a special gift from her mother. Matilde Kahlo had remembered that Frida and her father would sometimes paint in the park, so to keep her daughter busy, she commissioned a carpenter to make her an easel that she could use while lying in bed, even with the plaster corset. Half mummified in her body cast, Frida's shaking hands would render her first attempts at art.
Jeez. That's really sweet of her mom, though.
Yeah. Now, I don't love Matilde Kahlo because, and I can't fault them too much, right? Matilde and Guillermo both suffered from stress-induced epilepsy. Neither of them visited her in the hospital after the crash.
Oh, okay.
Not even once. Like, you're not going to brave it for your kid once? I don't know.
So did she... Oh, well, okay. Okay, so the logic is...
Her sisters would visit, the Cachuchas would visit, but her mom was like, I would fall ill if I saw you, so I won't go and see you. There's no record that she visited.
That's... The
right?
empathetic side of me wants to be like, I get it. And then the realist side
I'm sorry,
of me is
but
like,
as a parent,
suck it
I'm
up.
like,
come on,
I
what are
don't
you doing?
care. If I would lose all my legs to go and see my kid, I'm going to go see my kid. Right?
I think what you meant to say, if I were a parent, you're going to give everybody the impression you are a parent.
Yes, that's true. That's true. If I were a parent. Right.
But the credit I'll give is that's a cool easel. Hey, good on you. You made a cool easel for your daughter and got her painting.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we wouldn't have had Frida without it. Her first subjects were the ones available to a girl left paralyzed. Having worked for a time at an engraver's shop, Frida had a natural affinity for painting flowers and still lifes. Her style was controlled and organized, likely from her art classes provided at La Preparatoria. Here we can see adobe buildings webbed with new power lines peeking outside her window, or perhaps a bouquet of roses dying in their vase as no one has come to replace them. Most interestingly, though, is her portrait work. As the Cachuchas came to visit, she began painting them as subjects. Largely untrained, except for a few classes in high school, her posing was awkward and her perspective was really off, but her sense of color was natural and intrinsic. Mexicanidad, the art movement of her time, had a command of color that was native and instinctual. And even though Frida was obviously trying to copy the old masters as she painted her friends and her family, there was an intrinsic Mexicanness to her work that was unavoidable. The most masterful painting during this time, however, was of herself. As a sort of love letter to Alejandro, she would attempt her first serious self-portrait, aptly named Self-Portrait in a Velvet Dress. In it, a slender Frida is wrapped in a red dress with a deep plunging neckline, embroidered on the lapel with gold brocade. The sensuous yet dignified posing and outfit seemed to be a nod to the Italian masters, specifically Botticelli. Like some of Leonardo's work, her background was a disorienting storm with gray, turbulent swirls behind her. Apparently, this was a really common motif in a lot of portraits at the time. They would just do like swirlies in the background, right? That being said, her lines and her colors were more primitive in all areas except the face. It was almost as if there was a vignette focusing on her eyes. Her long neck leads to an expression that seems far off and all-knowing, mournful and lonely. This would make sense not only due to her pain, but because after Alejandro recovered, he was quickly whisked away on a trip around Europe with his family. Her attempt to make herself a sensual European beauty might have been a subtle way to tempt him back to Mexico.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, he recovers much quicker. There's also some pressure from his family that the two break it off, especially after that whole thing with her sleeping with the coworker, maybe situation. So after the crash, he was just like, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to Russia. And he went off to Russia and he went to France and Italy, and his parents kind of like made sure that the two wouldn't stay bonded, essentially. I think they remained friends throughout the rest of their lives, but Frida kind of painted this and sent him letters being like, I wish you could see my Botticelli. I wish you could see my portrait for you. Right?
It's really good. I'm looking at it.
Isn't it? Right?
It's really
For somebody's
good.
like basically first attempt at a self-portrait. I mean, of course she sketched a lot, right? But this is like her first real serious attempt at painting herself.
No, it's genuinely like impressive, not even by the standards of a first attempt. It's just a good painting. And I know you said that it was just sort of a common thing for it to have swirlies in the background or whatever, but to me, it's very clearly at the shore. There's waves in the sky, and you can even see a little bit of land just to the kind of top right of it, as if she's sort of almost as if. So actually, let me ask you this. When she painted it, had he already left?
Yes. Well, she was in the process of painting it when he left.
I wonder if there was some level of she's waiting at the shore for him to come back.
I imagine so. Frida was a romantic, I think, to a really high degree, even more so than like the rest of her peers. So I could totally imagine something like that, right? Her and Alejandro were like very... If there's like two types of romantic, there's like the cutesy, we're going to go to the carnival romantic, and then there's the like, I'm going to write you poetry romantic. She was the poetry type. Yeah. And you can kind of see that in that painting, right?
Yeah. It's very beautiful, though.
So talking about the sort of all-knowing look on the painting, I wrote, she actually writes a little letter to Alejandro talking about sort of her mind state after the crash, right? The two of them are talking about interesting facts and news and history and all the stuff that Alejandro is interested in as he's traveling through Europe. And she responds with, quote, "Why do you study so much? What secret are you looking for? Life will reveal it to you soon. I already know it all without reading or writing. A little while ago, not much more than a few days ago, I was a child who went about in a world of colors, of hard, intangible forms. Everything was mysterious, and when something was hidden, guessing what it was a game for me. If you knew how terrible it is to know suddenly, as if a bolt of lightning elucidated the earth. Now I live on a painful planet, transparent as ice. But it is as if I had learned everything at once in seconds. My friends, my companions became women slowly. I became old in an instant, and everything today is bland and lucid. I know that nothing lies behind. If there's something, I would see it." Which, it really reminds me of, I don't know, a feeling that a lot of people have when they're instantly put into a situation of disability, right? Where they feel like watching everybody go about their day being stressed about things that to them now seem unimportant, seems silly. Some people take a positive from it. Some people take a negative from that feeling. And then also her saying, I became old in an instance, and everything today is bland and lucid. Once you have a disability, a lot of people kind of treat you like their grandma. They don't want to talk shit with you. They don't want to treat you like they normally would. And I feel like she experienced a lot of that.
I can imagine that, I will say, though, she said it feels like she's living on a different planet. She's up suspended, so probably a planet with 0G, which is kind of cool.
You are just trying to pull one single drop of happiness from this episode, and it's
I'm
not going to happen, brother.
Really hard. I don't know if it's working for anybody out there, but
well, it's being suspended from the ceiling like Squidward in that episode with the jellyfish must be a lot like a fun house. It's like SpongeBob. Yeah, it's like SpongeBob. She's like Squidward and SpongeBob. Doesn't that make us all feel better? Anyway,
I'm both sorry and you're welcome.
Well, we just needed to laugh about nothing. Alejandro would painstakingly preserve each of her letters during this time, for which there are a dozen. I read through a bunch of these. These letters structure the basis of what we know about her life in the 2 years following the accident. Frida wrote constantly, all on the same themes. She knew that tears would be the strongest glue, and as Alejandro became a smaller and smaller part of her world, she almost used him more like a diary than actually like a conversational exchange, right? We know from these letters that her family didn't show up at the hospital very much. Her mother was so distraught that she was speechless for a month, and her father became sick with the news, so he couldn't visit either. The only family member that visited her was her sister Cristina and her older sister Matita, the one who got excommunicated from the family in the first episode. She read about the accident in the paper, and when she saw her sister's name, she rushed to the hospital, taking care of her every day. Frida writes, quote, "It was Matita who lifted my spirits. She told me jokes. She was fat and ugly, but she had a great sense of humor."
Aww.
Sisterly love. Dude,
take it easy.
Sister versus sister regards are like, it's brutal,
It's one of those, it's like, why even include that? You know what I mean? Like, you could just as easily be like,
tongue in cheek. Yeah,
she had gotten plump since I had seen her, but I loved, her jovial spirit. Something, but
that was not
she
Frida
got
though.
Fat
She's
and
like,
ugly, but she was there.
She had a great sense of humor. So there is some old Frida peeking out here, despite all the sadness, right? However, when everyone went home and she was alone in her hospital bed, her only companion was La Paloma, or the bald one, which was her nickname for death. You'll hear La Paloma a lot in all of her writings.
Is that the same imaginary friend where she went through the door and the glass and then saw the thing and her whole life?
No, that was a much nicer friend who wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, this is death.
Okay.
her other less friendly imaginary friend.
Again, going back to the only thing I know about Frida, which is her representation in Coco, it feels very accurate for her to be like, I used to have a friend. It was this lovely thing that knew everything about me, but my new friend is death.
That's kind of actually what I wrote in the next thing, which I said, from now until her last breath, Frida lived her life like an old Mexican folklore, teasing and tricking death to let her live just one more day. Her time in the hospital was an odd mix, sometimes making light of her decaying form, other times describing her pain in the most dramatic way that she could to pull those around her ever closer. I didn't add this quote, but I think it kind of makes sense with her vibe, right? She's fat and ugly, but she got a great sense of humor. When she found out where the iron pierced her through the stomach and out her vagina, she goes, "Oh, wow, I guess I lost my virginity." Which is so...
It's dark, but I appreciate it.
But if you're in that position, you're allowed to make that joke. You know what I'm saying?
It. Oh, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, one of her friends writes, quote, "She always acted happy. She had an incredible richness, and though one went to see her to console her, one came away consoled." Oh. Yeah, it's kind of sweet. Reminds me of my sister when she was particularly sick.
Her sister didn't write that, though, right? It was like,
no, that was just
I
one of her
showed up
buddies.
to see her and to console her, and I left after she told me I was fat and ugly.
Doctors would recommend she complete her recovery at home with the hope that family and some sunlight would do her some good, but that came along with its own challenges. The extent of her injuries were still so bad that no modern doctor would ever consider sending her home at this stage in the process. One arm remained contracted from muscle pain, and the inflammation from her shattered pelvis led to such intense gastrointestinal distress that even a sip of water could have her vomiting. Right? On one unfortunate evening, Frida could hear her mother begin to have a seizure in the next room, and without thinking, she tried to get up to help her. The quick movement sent her sprawling back onto her bed in anguish, hoping someone else would rescue her mother. Many of the nights were spent on cocaine or opiates to keep her from screaming through the night, which is also crazy, right? She's 19, all of her body is broken, you're just going to give her a bunch of cocaine?
They
were rolling, dude.
The thing back in the day, man. It really was. If you ever watched, I think I've mentioned before, the show The Nick. Did I ever tell you about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it on air.
Yeah, not for the faint of heart, but that was like their de facto knock you out drug, was like, let me get you this vial of cocaine.
So her recovery was awkward and never truly complete till the day she died. In fact, in 1926, a year after the accident, doctors told her she was free to move about, only to discover she had 3 vertebrae out of place. God damn. Like many chronically ill people, especially women, Frida found herself at odds with her doctors, who were either neglectful, too overworked, or didn't care to hear her complaints. In fact, the collapse she had experienced might have been avoided if the medical staff didn't neglect to x-ray her spine before giving her a false bill of health. They literally didn't even x-ray it. On top of that, her recovery was only as far as her parents could afford. And while Matilde and Guillermo were deeply grateful to the Red Cross, there were selective treatments they could never manage to give her in the first place. And now 19-year-old Frida would find herself once again wearing a plaster corset, as well as an apparatus on her right foot. Frustrated at the relapse, she writes to Alejandro, quote, "The second plaster corset they put on me doesn't work anymore. And for that, they threw almost 100 into the streets since they gave their pesos to a pair of thieves, which is what most doctors are." I get it. I get it, dude. You know, on one hand, it's like crazy that you're alive, but on the other hand, they didn't x-ray to see if your vertebrae were still straight. Like, that's crazy.
I also do wonder, and you maybe can speak to it a little bit more in this instance, but like recently, Kat has been telling me about how, I can't remember what the exact illness was or something like that, but she was saying that only recently have doctors found out that this one thing, how it works with women. It's this really common thing. It's escaping my mind right now. And I was like
heart attacks. Heart attacks are very different with women.
Sure. Let's say it's heart attacks, right? And she was like, yeah, they're only just discovering like how this affects women differently than men. And I was like, what? It's 2026. What are you talking about? And she was like,
yeah, dude.
Yeah, they just never thought we should study how this affects women instead of men.
They're doing the test, and they're like, well, I don't want to bother anybody by borrowing their property, so I guess we'll just we'll just test it on the men.
I don't know.
Like, that's
what the logic was there, if it was just a sexist thing, or if they just didn't ever realize like women's bodies and men's bodies are going to react differently. Like, I don't know, but it almost feels like that in this situation.
Yeah. It's also like I find that, and this is a gross generalization, but in my personal life, I found anecdotally that dudes can handle external pain, but women, when they are feeling some sort of internal pain, it has to be like, for me, a 10 before they tell anybody. Like
Yes.
if I have a migraine, the second I feel a headache, I'm taking Advil immediately. But Shalena will wait until her vision is like she's looking through 2 straws before she can actually, go ahead and take some meds. So but it's interesting because then a lot of doctors at the time would say that these women were more likely to complain, which is like, so which one is it? Right? So she kind of dealt with that a lot.
It reminds me of, and I'll keep this brief, but there's a point in that new show, The Paper, which is like the successor to The Office,
Uh-huh.
And there's a point where the Office or whatever the paper place gets a bunch of these different gadgets. And Oscar, the character of Oscar, gets one of those muscle stimulators for his abs, right? It's supposed to like help you work out. And he puts it on and he has it at like a 3 and he's like, oh yeah, it hurts. Like I can feel it kind of a thing. And this woman comes over, one of the other characters, and she's like, oh, let me try it. And she puts it on at the same setting and she's like, huh, I can't really feel too much. I mean, that's like, if that was my period, this would be great. And he goes, what? Like, what would be your period? And she goes, well, turn it up. And he clicks and she goes, keep going. And he clicks. She goes, keep going. He goes, clicks. And it gets all the way up to like 9. And he goes, what? How bad can that be? And then he puts it on and tries it. And he just immediately shrivels up and goes, it's not that bad.
Yeah,
So
dude.
I think that's where it comes from, is that women have this built-in ability to be like, I can handle pain, dude.
Yeah.
Fucking
like
buck up.
watching my sister like do exams because she was in like a clinical trial. And the amount of times they're like, oh, we couldn't find the vein. I'm so sorry. Let's try again. They're like, okay, we're going to have to try again. All right, we're going to poke you a 4th time. I hope you don't mind. All right, this time we're going to use your hand. Do you mind if we put the needle in your hand? And I'm like trying to support her when we're at these appointments, and I'm ready to fall over. Like, I'm like,
I am a total baby with needles. I admit it.
Yeah. So, maybe that's why Alejandro didn't visit so much. But the following year would be spent in a very slow recovery, but by late 1927, when Frida was 20 years old, she had been able to live a pretty normal life, walking about and visiting her friends. To call it miraculous would undermine the level of effort it took for her to get back on her feet, but it was certainly against the odds. Nonetheless, Frida began to fall in with her old crowd. The Cachuchas had grown up in the time it took for her to get to stand again, and things had changed. For one, they had all graduated without her, and now they were students of the professional schools of the university. All grown up, her little gang had given up their antics for more serious work, such as politics. They were no longer rebels and pranksters, instead, young adults fighting for the Mexican political freedoms that they were seeking out. The 2 issues they fought for was José Vasconcelos' 1928-29 campaign for the presidency against Pascual Rubio and the drive for, quote, university autonomy, basically allowing schools to be able to run independently of government oversight if they wished. Vasconcelos represented, at least to the Cachuchas, a break from the Eurocentric status quo. While it's highly controversial, Vasconcelos used an optimistic kind of reverse social Darwinism to explain Mexico's importance. So stay with me here. To put it simply, he argued that while countries like America had reached their success sooner by copying the ways of their European ancestors to get colonial powers, that sort of thing, their insistence on racial purity would be their downfall. Vasconcelos dreamed of a future where all the world's races would intermix and shed their limiting qualities to become one universal race, la Raza Cósmica, or the cosmic race.
Cool.
Kind of interesting, right? Where they're like, well, the Europeans are good at this, but they're not as athletic as the so-and-sos. And, the people from India are good at this, but they're not as good at this. And it's like, his heart's in the right place. There's definitely some issues with that sort of thinking. But in his eyes, José Vasconcelos believed this already happened to some extent in Mexico. He believed that he was like, well, I can't tell if anybody is Mayan or Aztec or Inca or, all of the other South American native groups that have, traveled and intermixed for the last 1,000 years. And then you add Spanish into the mix and Portuguese into the mix and German into the mix. We must be having like a really well-developed, well-rounded race, right?
Makes sense.
While most don't know it now, this is where the Mexican and Chicano concept of la raza comes from. So if you've ever heard somebody say la raza, Holmes, or like, la raza, that's like a common phrase amongst like Chicanos. That's where it comes from. They probably don't realize that's where it comes from because Vasconcelos' campaign was pretty short, but that's the original concept, is the concept of la raza cósmica, or the cosmic race.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Since the conquistadors arrived in Old Mexica, the cross-pollinating of old and new worlds had been happening, until it was impossible to truly decide what race someone belonged to. In his eyes, Mexico was a race of 1,000 origins, prepared for the future as the united workers of the world. His theory of la raza cósmica would later be shorthanded to la raza. While Vasconcelos would lose his shot at being president, his campaign would serve to bring Frida closer to the communist cause, which she would devote herself to for the rest of her life. At the center of Mexican communism were two magnetic forces, Julio Mella and Tina Modotti. While it's not a name that we would recognize here in the States, Julio Mella is considered one of the founding fathers of the Communist Party in Cuba. Born in 1903 in Havana, Mella would form underground student movements, much like Frida's own, before being hunted out of the country by Cuba's dictator, Fulgencio Batista. In Mexico, Julio Mella would do much of the same work, this time with his alluring lover and comrade, Tina Modotti. Yeah. Modotti, on the other hand, was a woman of the arts. Originally born in Italy, Tina came to the West and settled in San Francisco, first working as a model and an actress, but soon her interest would turn to the other side of the lens, taking on an apprenticeship with the famous photographer Edward Weston. You probably know Edward Weston stuff. Those painting or those pictures of like pears or fruits or like chilies, and they kind of look like naked people. That's the best way to describe it.
Yes.
Yeah, right? That's the Edward Weston we're talking about. And he decided to go to Mexico for a lot of his photography work, so she traveled with him. And then Tina would meet Julio Mella, and they had sort of a short and passionate relationship since only 2 years after Frida had met the couple through the Vasconcelos campaign, Julio would be shot in the street by an assassin, possibly hired by Batista or even another communist branch. We don't really know. It's kind of a mystery. In fact, a lot of people thought that Tina Modotti, his girlfriend, was the one who orchestrated the hit. It's like this big, it was like this big scandal that happened in like the Mexican political / communist circles at the time.
Two things. One is I'm pretty sure it's Fulgencio. Not Gencio, and I could be wrong about that. But the reason I think it's Fulgencio is because, silly reference, there's the show Modern Family. When Gloria and Jay have a baby together, she insists that the baby's name is Fulgencio. And so Jay is like, I'm going to call him Joe.
That's so funny.
Anyway, I could be wrong. I don't
Leave
know.
in the comments, is it Fulgencio or Fulgencio?
Yes, I am curious to know
Yes.
that as well. Second thing, though, is the whole La Raza Cósmica. Makes me think of, there's this show called Silo on Apple TV, and it's all about these people that have been living in this tube basically for like 400 years or something,
Yes,
260
yes,
years or whatever. And my one big comment that I said to Kat after we watched like all of it is I was like, it doesn't make sense that in this little isolated tube, we still have like distinctly white people, distinctly black people, distinctly Hispanic people. I'm like,
That's
after
true.
that amount of time, like, I think there'd be enough sort of just like, I don't know, everybody just kind of blending together. And like,
Yes.
I think it actually would have been a smarter move for everybody in that show to be of mixed race to some extent. Cause I think it would
because that would be what happened if you were in a silo with only a handful of people.
Exactly. And you had to be approved to
Or
have
if it
children.
didn't, then you might have some medical issues coming your way.
Yeah, and that's like a big part of the show too, is that like not everybody can just have babies. Like there's like a lottery on who can have babies, sort of a thing. So anyway, silly sidebar, but just a note.
Yeah. Anyway, so even after the assassination with Julio Mella, Tina would remain a central figure in Mexican communism, hosting parties for proletariat artists to meet. It's more than likely that Frida would meet her future husband, Diego Rivera, at one of these parties, although there are dozens of stories as to how the two began to fall in love. Like, looking it up online, everybody's got a different answer for this. But before I tell the tale of the elephant and the dove, I think an introduction is in order. While Frida Kahlo is more recognized these days, Diego Rivera had a life and fame large enough to warrant his own series by far. Diego María de la Concepción Juan Nepomuceno Estanislao de la Rivera y Barrientos Acosta y Rodríguez was expected to do great things from birth. And yes, that was his full name.
At least it's an easy name.
Oh, yeah, rolls right off the tongue. Born in 1886 to a converso Jewish mother, which is like a Spanish convert Jew, right? Okay. And a Mexican father, he was the perfect example of Vasconcelos's Raza Cósmica, with an ancestry that spanned across the world. Diego showed his skill in art even as a little boy. His parents first noticed his artistic expression in the way that many parents do, with unwanted scribbles on the walls. Instead of fighting his compulsion to graffiti the house, his father had a room lined in blackboard so Rivera could draw to his heart's content.
Cool.
Yeah. Starting at 10, Diego begged his family for a formal education, and he began to take after-school art classes. His skill was so fantastic by the time he was 21 that he had received an official pension from the governor of Veracruz to study old masters in Europe. Traveling all across the old world, Diego studied Botticelli, Raphael, and most especially Michelangelo, boo Michelangelo. But the friends he had made were more bohemian. If you've listened to the Da Vinci, you'll know why I say boo Michelangelo. But like I said, his friends were more of like the boho style. He was often hanging out with, people like Guillaume Apollinaire or Gertrude Stein or even Pablo Picasso. The two of them were buds.
So, okay. There's the next connection.
What do we got? Gertrude Stein?
Gertrude
right?
Stein. Her and Mabel, I literally have a book that I just picked up that's all about the communications between Gertrude Stein and Mabel. They were pals. Gertrude Stein lived with her in Florence for a number of years.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So there we go.
Oh, I bet you the two of them have talked. I wonder if Mabel ever met Diego. They might have at like a party or something, because Diego was... he liked to talk about himself. And if there was an opportunity for him to meet someone socially, he would have taken it.
Do you have any concept of when he would have hung out with Gertrude Stein, or approximately what year?
I didn't research his specific relationship with Stein. Because
if it was, I would assume that it would be somewhere between, I would guess, probably like 1909 to maybe like 1914. And if that's the case, almost definitely. Especially if he was studying Michelangelo in Italy, he almost definitely would have gone to Florence, which is where Mabel was living. It's even possible he went to Mabel's house.
Yeah, he was born in 86, and he was 21 when he left Mexico to go to Europe. So the math might check out there.
Yeah, it is entirely possible.
But anyway, by 1921, he would leave Gertrude Stein, Pablo Picasso, those guys in Europe, and come back to Mexico. His first commission in Mexico was the very same one that Frida had snuck around when she was in school and tried to trip him, if you remember, with the soap bar and the taking his lunch and all of that.
Oh, it wasn't the one where she tried to burn him alive as he sat on his rafter?
That might have also been him, but it could have been another painter. Who knows? There was a lot of people working at the school that day. She did steal his lunch and try to make him fall down the stairs because she thought it would be funny because he's fat.
That's right. Didn't she like soap up the stairs or something like that?
Yes. And then her professor got hit with it anyway. It was at La Preparatoria while painting his fresco named Creation that Diego found his calling as a mural painter. That was his first real big mural. Rivera didn't just like murals for their sheer size, but for what they represented. Diego wasn't just a communist, he was the communist. One of the central members of the Mexican Party, a founder of the Syndicate of Workers, Painters, and Sculptors in Mexico, and a writer for the communist article El Machete. Diego was devoted to the cause. Pulling from the Mexicanidad movement, he believed that with the native aesthetics of Mexico combined with the public platform of a mural, his art could change the world, and he was kind of right. Literal dozens of gigantic murals that Rivera would paint in his lifetime would become nearly synonymous with the Mexican art that we think of today. If you think Mexican art, you're probably thinking like tan backgrounds, kind of stockier, rounded faces, lots of colors with like yellows and pinks and like some like faded blues, right? This is Diego, right? A lot of people are like, oh, Diego didn't paint Mexico. Mexico painted Diego, right? That's like how synonymous his style is with Mexicanidad, right?
Yeah, there's something, and correct me if I'm wrong here, based off of my limited knowledge of Diego Rivera, there's something about his art that feels very folky.
Yeah, he loved folk stuff. He loved like what we would call, and you'll see me refer to it as pre-Columbian, anything pre-Columbus. He loved that shit. He would like collect pre-Columbian idols. He would he like to reference Aztec stuff. And then he started to move his folk art, and we'll talk about this in episode 3, his folk art to almost like the folk art of the industrial era, where he liked to draw machines in kind of a folksy way. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, but it definitely, it reflected, and you'll have to help me as we go along here, but when you say conjure up that image of like Mexican art, one is I immediately also go to southwestern art of America.
Yeah.
Right? Feels very similar, and it feels very like... Unlike Frida, who it felt like was trying to be very interpretive with things, and it was sort of like, look at this thing, and where does your mind take you with this?
Diego was more about like the grand schemes, right? Like he would paint a story about working in the farm, a story about Zapata overthrowing the government, a story about the communist movement as it approaches the age of the atom, right?
Right.
That was his bread and butter, whereas Frida, Diego says it himself. He says, I paint the outside, she paints the inside, right?
Yeah, this has to be a part of it too. I think of things like Mayan ruins, right? And you look at the kind of chiseled into the walls, and there's these images of whatever it is, gods or something, and they're holding over their head like a sun. And it's, historians will look at it and go, so this is actually the story of when this god did this thing. They actually stole the sun, and they did a bubble, and I'm making all this up.
Iconic, in the definitive term, iconic, yeah.
But it was very representative too. It was none of it was meant to be like, what do you feel when you see this? It was like, no, this is the god stealing the sun. Like,
Diego definitely had some room for like interpretation.
Okay.
But generally, he had a point that he was trying to make when he painted something. It wasn't like, I painted this. How do you feel about it? He's like, do you understand that this is about communism? Because if you don't, it is about communism. I want you to let you know that this is communism.
Got it. Cool.
So yeah, literal dozens of gigantic murals that Rivera would paint in his lifetime would become nearly synonymous with the Mexican art we know of today. His work as a muralist was an opportunity for him to give his country a sense of national pride, but it was also an opportunity to sate his appetite for his second greatest passion, hoeing around. Despite being, as Herrera puts it, quote, fantastically fat and considered very ugly by anyone who laid eyes on him, Diego Rivera was a womanizer of the highest order. His extra large stature. Yeah, you might not be cheering for him later on in this series, but yeah, get it,
Okay, fair
let
enough.
that personality shine.
Yeah, he's not a looker. I'm looking at him right now.
Yeah, there's no way, dude. This is like a Jay-Z and Beyonce scenario here.
It's worse than that, to be honest. But anyways, keep going.
Way worse. His extra-large stature, baggy clothes, frizzy, receding hair, and very wrinkly face didn't stop Diego from making it happen. In fact, most of his peers agreed that more women chased him than the other way around. His sexual appetite was unmatched, and his skill as an artist gave him the opportunity to sate it regularly. It was said that if a woman wanted to be a muse for Diego, they had to be open to his touch as much as his gaze. Very gross. Well, it's certain that he got away with far more than what was appropriate. It wasn't just his fame, power, or skills as an artist that attracted women to him, despite his appearance. Diego, by many accounts, was actually a devout feminist. In fact, he often considered women to be the superior sex. Now, I will put a big caveat on this. His behavior does not talk about feminism as he gets through his life. He is a feminist in ideology only. He also is kind of a feminist in the way that he'll like, women are so much better than me. I could never improve myself and be a better person like they are. Like he almost used it as an excuse, like to consider women as the superior sex.
Yeah.
And we'll see more of that as we get through closer to episode 4.
Also, just doing a quick Google search, I didn't really realize this, but one of his, what I believe to be very, very famous paintings, I have actually seen in person.
Oh, really? Was it in Detroit?
No, in Pasadena. One of his paintings is
nice.
at the Norton Simon Museum in Pasadena.
Yes. Yeah. He had something like 150 something murals by the time he died. It was crazy.
That's cool.
He was prolific, right? But yeah, in an interview with a New York reporter several years after Frida and Diego met, he says, quote, "Men are savages by nature. They still are today. History shows that the first progress was made by women. Men preferred to remain brutes who fought and hunted. Women remained at home and cultivated the arts. They founded industry." At a time when most men abhorred gender equality, Diego's words drew in strong women as much as his piggish tendencies pushed them back away. In fact, at the time Frida would have met him, he was snatching up any woman he could find. See, Diego, now in his 40s, had just separated from his ex-wife and ex-muse, Lupe Marin, over his infidelity with Dina Modotti, the pretty photographer apprentice, right? She was the gracious host of his Mexican communist hangouts, and Diego used his time as a free man to prey on any lady he could find. I should also mention, he has a whole family in Russia, I want to say. He has like a Russian wife and kids that he was like, peace, going back to Mexico.
Oh, like
this was...
like one of
he
those.
probably used the child support letters as toilet paper because he had so many. You know, like that was the type of guy he was.
It's like it's in countless movies and TV shows or whatever where somebody's just like, so I didn't really know my dad that well because it turned out he had a secret family. Well, actually, we were the secret family.
Literally,
like, that's how it feels with Diego Rivera.
Yeah, man. He was like, you know, marriage is kind of like a communist concept, so I hope you're cool with those. I'm going to dip.
Communism way beyond politics.
Literally.
We practice family communism here.
Yeah. Now, you guys share your mom's paycheck, and then I will share a room with a totally different person in another country. Hope you guys are cool with that. Goodbye.
Each according to his means, by each according to their ability to get laid.
Literally. So kind of a shitty dude. While it's certain that Frida and Diego had contact with one another beforehand, this gives us some context for the story that Diego tells about his first encounter with Frida. I will say he's a great storyteller, which will be played out by Salma Hayek and Alfred Molina on the big screen in like 2001. Their story begins as Diego lays on a scaffold painting a fresco for the Ministry of Education. I'm going to paraphrase it for time, but Diego tells the story, quote, "A girl shouted up at me, 'Diego, I have something important to discuss with you.' On the ground beneath me stood a girl of about 18. She had a fine, nervous body, topped with a delicate face. Her hair was long, and thick eyebrows met above her nose like the wings of a blackbird. When I climbed down, she said, I didn't come here. When I climbed down, she said, I didn't come here for fun. I have to work to earn my livelihood. I have some paintings, and I want a straightforward opinion. I can't afford to go on to appease my vanity. I want you to tell me whether you think I'll be good enough to make it worth my while. I brought 3 paintings. Will you look at them?' So I said yes. She turned to each of them, leaning against the wall to face me. They were all paintings of women. As I looked at them one by one, I was immediately impressed. I wonder why. The canvases revealed an unusual energy of expression, precise delineation of character, and true severity. They showed none of the tricks in the name of originality that usually mark the work of ambitious beginners. She undoubtedly noticed the enthusiasm in my face, and before I could say anything, she scolded me defensively, saying, I have not come to you looking for compliments. I want the criticism of a serious man. I'm neither an art lover nor an amateur. I'm simply a girl who must work for a living. I was puzzled by her attitude towards me. She explained, the trouble is that some good friends advise me not to put too much stock in what you say. They say that if it's a girl who asks your opinion and she's not an absolute horror, you're ready to gush all over her. Well, tell me one thing. Do you actually believe I should continue to paint, or should I turn to some other sort of work? In my opinion, no matter how difficult it is for you, you must continue to paint. Fine. Now, I'd like to ask you another favor. I've done other paintings which I'd like you to see. Since you don't work on Sundays, could you come to my place to see them? I live in Coyoacán. My name is Frida Kahlo. The moment I heard her name, I remembered my friend, who was the director of the preparatoria, had complained about a girl of that same name. She was the leader of a band of juvenile delinquents who raised such uproars that he considered quitting on her account. Then another image popped into my mind of a 12-year-old girl who had defied Lupe, Diego's old muse and wife, 7 years before. I said, "But you are..." She stopped me quickly, almost putting a hand to my mouth, and threateningly she said, "Yeah, so what? I was the girl in the auditorium, but that has absolutely nothing to do with now. You still want to come on Sunday?" I had great difficulty not answering with more than ever, but if I showed my excitement, she might not let me come, so I only answered yes. Next Sunday found me in Coyoacán. When I knocked on the door, I heard someone over my head whistling the Internationale. In the top of a high tree, I saw Frida in overalls starting to climb down. Laughing, she paraded all of her paintings before me. I did not know it then, but Frida has already become the most important fact in my life. End quote.
Well, hey, at the very least, I'm stoked.
A sweet story.
And, well, I was going to say, this is how much longer after her accident she's climbing up trees. Hey.
That's true.
That's a win.
That's true. I also like that you can immediately see, like, Frida's like, don't fuck with me, pendejo. Like, I'm not here to play. Do you like the paintings? Yes or no? And he had to be like, okay, all right. I can't be too excited because then she'll know that I want to get into her pants. So I have to pretend like I don't want to get into her pants. Okay, yes, they're kind of good. And then she's like, okay, sweet. Now we can hang out.
Yeah, I feel like it's what I would do if I ever made a film and I went to go ask Quentin Tarantino for advice. I'd be like, I'm wearing closed-toed shoes, look at my eyes, and then look at my movie. I don't care about...
Yeah. Because that's how big his reputation. She was like, oh, dude, he's already liking this stuff? No way. He just wants to get with me. But a few days after his visit to Frida's home, Diego, now around 43, would begin courting Frida, who's about 22, although she did claim that she was only 18.
Ooh.
So...
Okay.
As the old saying goes, Frida would sacar un clavo con otro clavo, take out one nail with another, replacing Alejandro Gomez with the famous, albeit old, painter's affections. One of her friends would remark on the switch, quote, "Where Alejandro would cover Frida in flowers, Diego would have grabbed her and kissed her." It's supposed to sound romantic, but I just know what he looks like, so it's like kind of hard.
Yeah. Going back to your comparison from a few minutes ago about Jay-Z and Beyonce, I think Diego Rivera makes Jay-Z look like Michael B. Jordan.
That's true. That is really true.
Like, straight up, dude.
Yeah, y'all got to look up some photos of this dude because it's rough.
It's rough. Like, I think in any other life,
especially next to Frida.
If this guy was not a painter, a famous painter, he would be the doorman for a brothel and not a good one. You know what I mean? Like,
he's got bouncer energy, right?
Or, oh, okay. Here's another accurate comparison. It's like if
Reddit moderator.
If what's his name? She said Reddit moderator, and it threw the name out of my head. If Harvey Weinstein was born in Mexico and 50 pounds heavier at least, we're landing at Diego Rivera.
That's kind of, we're getting there. We're getting closer. Yeah, maybe a couple of sunburns too, but yeah. It would only take a few days for the two to fall in love, and the two would go together like tortillas con mantequilla. They never bored one another, sharing a childlike excitement for life, a devotion to communism, and a dark sense of humor that delighted them. For Diego, Frida had brought out his boyish humor and prankster nature, while Diego's romantic side emboldened Frida's sensuous nature. This guy must have said the craziest stuff, right? He must have been a literal wizard with words. I'm just...
I guess, because at this point there has been no indication of physicality, let's say.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I wonder, I mean, he must be...
No, they did.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Oh, 100% they did.
Then you know, the guy must have been dynamite in the sack. I don't know what else to say. Like...
I don't know, man. I just imagine. No, I'm not going to get into details. But anyway, we're going to skip right over
Don't
that.
imagine, Akiva. Don't imagine.
Just a lot of sweat, right?
Oh. God.
As far as paintings
It's
go,
like Jabba the Hutt having sex.
And we're not just making fun of him for his stature. I just want to say that he's also a bad person, which I think gives me free license to do it.
I think so as well. I'm not a skinny guy. I'm a little chunky.
Yeah,
so
I'm definitely.
I'm not trying to hate.
Pushing a couple of extra calories for sure.
Anyway, sorry.
But he was a dick, so it's fair game, right? And that's always Shalane and I's rule. It's like, once you're an asshole, I can talk about the way you look. As far as paintings go, the two had their own practices. Diego saw something unique in Frida's work and refused to mentor her for fear of ruining it. Nevertheless, Frida would peer over his shoulder, picking up tricks here and there, unable to avoid the great artist's influence on her work. As their relationship continued, Frida's politics became an even bigger part of her life. Her white blouses and flapper dresses were soon replaced with work jeans, red shirts, and a leather jacket. She would start to hold secret meetings, attend workers' rallies, and even perform speeches on behalf of the downtrodden of Mexico. It wouldn't be long before the two wished to get married, and needless to say, there were mixed reviews. On Diego's side, most people just rolled their eyes at the old horn dog finding yet another muse to prey upon. Most of his friends expected him to get bored of her in a couple of months. Lupe Marin, who was still friends with Diego after the divorce, disliked Frida for her crass behavior. Quote, "It struck me as very disagreeable to see the so-called youngster drink tequila like a real mariachi."
Like,
on Frida's side...
Of all the things disagreeable about Frida's nature, I'm like, drink your tequila. I don't care. Quit lighting dogs on fire.
Okay. On Frida's side, her friends and family were split on the matter. Some of them would remark at how ugly he was, while others advised her to marry Diego, since then she would be the wife of a famous painter. Matilde, her mother, mourned the whole situation. She claimed that seeing her little Frida marry someone who she saw as a fat, ugly atheist communist was like, quote, marriage between an elephant and a dove. Matilde begged Alejandro to intervene, but he had no more pull on her anymore. Guillermo Kahlo, ever the German pragmatist, knew that Diego could help with their financial troubles. While he wasn't sure if he liked all that communist nonsense, and he thought the whole thing was a bit ridiculous, he saw his daughter as a smart, independent person who wouldn't put herself in a position she wasn't happy with. During one of Guillermo's first conversations with Diego, he asked him, quote, "I see you're interested in my daughter, eh?" Diego responded, "Yes, otherwise I wouldn't be coming all the way out to Coyoacán to see her. She is a devil." "I know it." "Well, I've warned you."
Yes, she is.
I like how he's like, I'm just more worried about the dude here. The two would marry on August 21st, 1929.
Oh, okay.
Considering... Yeah, so we're it's about the right time, right?
We're cruising through time. I thought you were going to say 1926. I was like, God damn.
Yeah, no. Considering the traditional ceremony to be too bourgeoisie, they elected to hold a wedding with 3 witnesses along with Frida's father. Diego wore his same baggy, wrinkly clothes, and Frida borrowed her clothing from her native maid, wearing a traditional Mexican outfit for the occasion. Cool. In an empty city hall, Guillermo stood up laughing, saying, quote, "Gentlemen, is it not true that we all play acting?" But it was no joke. Newspapers across Mexico announced the famous painter's new marriage, and the two headed home for the wedding party. Painters, communists, criminals, and poets drank the night away in celebration of the old frog face and his new blushing bride. Diego and his buddies got so drunk off tequila, they went out into the street with their pistols, shooting at signs and streetlights.
Cool.
In a scuffle, he ended up breaking a man's finger after the wedding, and while she denies it, Lupe Marin, Diego's ex-wife and muse, lifted up Frida's skirt in a drunken rage, announcing to all who could hear, quote, "See these 2 sticks? These are the legs that Diego has instead of mine." For better or for worse, the elephant and the dove were tied together for life. And that is where we'll pick up for part 3 of Frida Kahlo.
I was like, we're getting there. We're getting there. I thought you were going to end it right when they like meet or right after he tells his story or something like that. But
We got too much to cover for that, brother.
so I'm assuming the episode title here is going to be The Elephant and the Dove.
I was thinking that, or I was also thinking La Bailarina because of the scenario with the bus crash, because that's a big part of her life too. But Diego's also a big part of her life. They kind of seem to be equal tragedies. I think she even says that. There's a quote. I don't want to. Yeah, I'll spoil it for this one. She says, "I've had 2 accidents in my life: when I got into a bus crash and when I met Diego."
She should have changed it to, I've had 2 collisions with buses in my life. One crippled my body, the other crippled my mind.
Guess which one? Oh, man.
It's fun burning on this
man.
guy. He also reminds me of the type of person who would constantly have to carry around like a handkerchief with him, not to blow his nose, but to constantly be wiping sweat from him in various places.
Oh, yeah, he was famously sweaty too.
Oh, okay. You look at him and he looks like a sweaty person.
He looks like a sweaty guy.
He
That guy
does.
smells like cheese. You know he smells like cheese. Oh, man. 41 and, according to his notion, 18. What are you doing with a girl that age, dude? What are you doing? What do you guys have in common? What, you want to give her history lessons? I don't...
Okay.
I understand that there's like an age of consent thing here and they're old enough, but I'm just talking about from my personal experience.
I hear you.
At 26 now, if I wanted to date a high school girl, I'd be like, what do I have to talk to you about?
No, that's very true. But I will say, okay. If I was to play devil's advocate, I'm not defending this here, people, but if I'm playing devil's advocate, it would be
Emphasis on devil.
1, Frida, precocious to begin with, right?
Yes.
Old beyond her years for a very long period of time. Secondly, after her injury and time in suspended animation, she said specifically, she was like, I grew old in a day, or whatever it was, right?
Yes.
She aged very rapidly and like,
So maybe her
became-
mind was like, this person seems more my pace now.
I kind of wonder, right?
And this is kind of like Guillermo's thing, and this is why like I hesitate. I don't know, but Guillermo, who raised her, was like, I don't see my daughter putting herself in a position that she doesn't want to be in. She's just too smart for that.
Sure.
And of course, a smart kid is not the same thing as a dumb adult, but I understand at least the sentiment there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, look, it is weird, but it is always
just
one
for
of those...
looks alone, it's just like, forget the age thing. It really is the elephant and the dove here. Like, Frida's got the unibrow, and if you're all natural, you like that. She's a pretty person. She's an attractive individual. And then there is a World of Warcraft player, but in 1920s Mexico.
I do also... It's because this is a weird one, and I know, and I don't really want to offend anybody, because I know that there are these large gap relationships that people have and are like, you don't know my life, you don't know what I'm like, we do get along great. Like, so again, I don't want to,
I've had that even in my own family, happily married people with a big gap. But
right.
yeah,
I don't want to belittle people that are like that, but I will say it is always at least weird to examine from a distance. And I have this example of somebody I used to work with. I will keep all names out of this, but I used to work with this one woman who I think was even younger than me. And at the time, I think I was not even 30 years old yet. And objectively a very beautiful woman. And her husband, I think, was like in his either late 50s or early 60s. And it was always one of those things where, like, the few times that she and I would talk, there was always this level of defense to it that was like, but you don't understand. And that we actually we just get along really, really well. And I'm like, I don't care. If you never even talked about it, I'd be fine with that. Like, it seems like you want to be defending this more than I care about it.
And
sort of
I'll
a
say
thing.
this for the listeners. There's a laundry list of other reasons why Frida should have never married Diego besides his age. And we're going to get through that. We're going to see that in episode 3. We're definitely going to see that in episode 4.
Yeah. I think that probably is going to end up being the more important factor here, because I think, I don't know, I think it's always going to be a little bit strange. My example was going to be, because if it was Mr. Rogers in his mid-50s and he married this, like, you know, whatever, 25-year-old woman, would we be questioning it? I'm like, no, we would be. We would be like, Mr. Rogers, what are you doing, dude? So I don't know. Maybe it's just something that I need to change personally and not look at the same way. But then there's
So
also
judgmentally, but also
a
like
protectiveness that I go like, oh wait, but are you kind of like?
Are you sure? Are you sure about that? Let's just look at the paper before you sign it. You know?
I don't know. Yeah.
This car's been pre-owned.
It's just again, I'm not trying to put anybody down out there has those, I don't know what you call them, gap relationships or something like that.
Yes.
If you're happy, you're happy. It's just in this one particular situation, it does feel like a creepy old dude kind of specking on a young, beautiful woman.
And it 100% was that. Like, that's like, that is his MO. He was like, I'm a good painter. I'm good at talking. I'm kind of nice to women. That gives me access to as many naked women as I possibly could ask for.
Sure.
And that was his life.
And hey, here we go. I'm going to put it out there. If any of our listeners out there are listening to this and going, Daniel Akiva, you really don't know what you're talking about, shoot us an email, thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. Give me an explanation.
You're going to use that as
I want to know.
as a plug for interaction. Yeah, do it.
But I also do want to know, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. I've never had this deep of a conversation or somebody just write their thesis
and I'd love
on
to just
it.
hear
So
in the
I'm
comments,
curious.
what are your thoughts on their relationship? You know, what do you think? Do you think that this is going to, for those of you who don't know the story, you think this one's going to work out? Let us know in the comments. So,
well, awesome episode, dude. We talked about this going into Frida, where I was like, I don't really know what to expect. And you were like, I don't know what to expect, or you did know what to expect, because you were like, the more I look, the sadder it gets, kind of a thing. It's way more entertaining than I think you gave it credit for.
Yeah, I didn't realize that we were going to be laughing so much in this episode.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're welcome, because we're making dumb jokes along the way, because I think we have to.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd just be sad all day. And not all day, because a lot of it is actually sort of fun and cute and, you know, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. The gunfighting after the weddings and the shooting at the street lamps and drinking tequila and partying like mariachis. That's kind of cute. That's kind of adorable that the two of them had that moment together.
For sure. And, you know, apart from her trying to, you know, paralyze him essentially by making him fall downstairs with soap, it is sort of a sweet story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, of her genuinely being taken by her beauty of her paintings and everything like that. I will say it was really funny to hear him talk about her eyebrows.
Like the wings of a blackbird.
The wings of a blackbird.
That is the only way. I'm just thinking about it like that. Taking it out of the funny, putting it into the romantic. That is a descriptor that you would use for somebody that you truly have loved your whole life, right? Like, to see something that everybody else sees as like a flaw and be like, her eyebrows were like the wings of a blackbird. No wonder everybody wanted to sleep with this dude despite his looks. He was just so poetic.
That is nice.
You know?
That's a nice way to say it. It's better than being like, her eyebrows were that of the McDonald's golden arches.
Her eyebrows were that of a cartoon caveman.
That is weirdly accurate. Hey, love to all our unibrow friends out
love.
there. All love.
Literally, she's 10 times more influential to the world than I will ever be. So,
I know.
You know, it worked.
I know. And I pluck my unibrow, so... All right, everybody. Well, we will probably leave you there. Again, thanks for all of our new and old, we don't want to call it old, but existing, I guess, listeners. We do appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully you're enjoying the show so far and this whole series on Frida. Once again,
Yes.
if you are enjoying the show and you want to give us some support, a little bit of love, you can do so by going to our Patreon page, patreon.com/thebiographers. We've already said it before just a second ago, but if you have any questions, comments, corrections, or if you just want to say hey and chat for a second or whatever, you can shoot us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. We'd appreciate any kind of kind reviews you could leave us anywhere as well, whether that be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you get your content. We are on social media. We were actually just having a whole conversation about how we're in the works of getting more video content, very specifically actually filming when we record the podcast. So I don't know exactly if it'll be during the Frida episodes. It might be in our next series, but we're going to get video content going. We feel like more people on YouTube are wanting to actually see us do our chitty chatty thing. So hopefully that's of interest to y'all as well.
Yeah.
So stay tuned there. And then as always, Akiva, after... I don't know if you're going to want to do your job anymore after this last weekend, but any metalwork updates you want to give us?
I had kind of a class from hell. I don't think that was on the episode, but it was wild. But I still love it. If you want to learn how to do knife making, you live in Colorado, or you are going to visit Colorado, you should check out Hardy and Fuller. It is a all-around metalsmithing makerspace in Denver, in the heart of Denver. I teach knife making there. You can also learn blacksmithing, welding from a bunch of other cool people that I consider my friends. And if you want to meet me, go to Hardy and Fuller, take one of those classes. If you want to just buy a knife from me, I have tons of stuff on the website right now. Go to metalworkbymeola.com and use the code biographers at checkout for 10% off your order.
And if you're listening to this episode on time, you should have, if my math is mathing correctly, you should have
days
until...
before.
What is it, March 24th? Because I think you said a month, but I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do March 24th. So in that case, actually, this will be the last episode, if you listen to it on time, that you will be able to use the code TASTINGHISTORY for 15% off any of your orders, just because we got a bunch of new listeners. So once again, Tasting History at checkout at metalworkbymeola.com if you want to buy a handmade custom knife, which is my bread and butter. That's how you support me.
And his last name is spelled M-E-O-L-A. Just to make sure everybody knows that correctly.
That's fair.
Perfect. So again, everybody go check out Akiva's work. Again, thanks so much for listening. And do remember, like always, ignorance is not stupidity. It is the absence of knowledge. And I do hope you all learned something today.
See ya!
You've been listening to The Biographers. For more information, please visit thebiographerspodcast.com.